In this video, I'm talking about 4 ways to impress any Scorpio. Number 1, and this is the most important above all, is you have to demonstrate your authenticity. And you can't just demonstrate it, right? You can't pretend to be authentic. You have to be authentic and you have to let that show through. A Scorpio is going to notice that if it's there, and it's going to get their attention, absolutely. I saw an article recently that the word of the year was authenticity. I don't know who puts that out or who gets to decide the word of the year, but it makes a lot of sense. In a year where AI and ChatGPT and OpenAI have dominated headlines, have become household terms, and in a year where these tools are starting to be used more and more, authenticity, that genuine humanness, that genuine uniqueness, becomes increasingly important. There's something inescapable, something that we can never put our finger on, something godlike, spiritual, that makes every human unique. You could feed these large language models all the training data in the world, and it's never going to be able to replicate you, or it's never going to be able to be as unique as each human is capable of being. Why is authenticity so important to a Scorpio? All right, I'll give you 2 reasons. I think one is a sort of mundane TLDR reason, and the other is maybe a little bit more esoteric, a little bit more nuanced. I think the first reason is just because it's more interesting to them. Scorpio is not stimulated by someone that is sort of copying their look from Instagram trends, or is using all their catchphrases from popular memes, or is trying to replicate their neighbor or their roommates. No one is perfectly unique, right? We're all influenced by the people around us. We all are basic to some degree. And there's a lot of basic things that are basic for a reason, because they're awesome. Fall time, winter time, all the hoopla, the stereotypical things, doing the romantic Christmas stuff in the winter, getting the tree, doing the fire, whatever, watching the Christmas movies, going apple picking, doing the PSL thing in fall. We all love that stuff. Maybe not everyone, maybe not even a lot of Scorpios. I don't want to digress too much, but you know, within reason, right? I think a Scorpio just feels like there is something so stimulating about someone that thinks for themselves, someone that decides what their taste is by exploring and listening to different music or trying on different styles and figuring out what works for them. It's a well of mystery to a Scorpio. It's exciting to get to know that kind of person because they don't fit the typical like A plus B equals C type of equation for getting to know people. I think on a more nuanced, esoteric level, you think about Scorpio, you think about its association with the 8th house. The 8th house is a very esoteric house, the house of transformation, cycles of death and rebirth. And it's all in the name of soul transformation, of soul growth, of karmic work in this current moment. And it has a lot to do with letting go and making oneself vulnerable and giving oneself up to circumstances, to others, to things they can't control. That's why the 8th house is often associated with merging with another, relationships, intense, intimate partnerships, combining of resources. There's this kind of commitment and purging, and all of it is in the name, again, of teaching the soul a lesson. It's this never-ending, eternally reoccurring cycle. And the minimum viable product that comes out of that cycle, we hope, right? We hope what calcifies is a continuing authenticity. It is a continuing alignment with the soul. And this is all kind of intense. This is like not great fodder for a first date or coffee conversation per se, but Scorpio is going to have these things brewing underneath. When they go and meet someone, does that person seem like it's someone that could challenge them and be their partner in that process of transformation and soul growth? Or is it someone that's just playing it safe, someone that's scared of their own edges, someone that doesn't want to necessarily step outside of what's pre-prescribed to them by their parents, by society, by their friends, right? Scorpio wants someone that is walking their own path. And it's incredibly impressive to a Scorpio. Even when being authentic seems messy, seems scary, seems like it's making you look worse than you actually are, a Scorpio will notice the underlying truth. They will notice the underlying commitment to authenticity. And again, it's going to just catch their attention and impress them. Number two, you have to demonstrate and you have to have a sense of passion, of spiritual excitement about the things in your life that are exogenous to a relationship, exogenous to whatever idea you have of a romantic partnership. Scorpio, it's this weird catch-22 where Scorpio, when they're getting to know someone, it's this kind of cosmic dance, this game where they are showing their intensity, you are showing your cards. It's this back and forth, and Scorpio ultimately wants to command and win your affection and romance you and seduce you, in healthy ways, in the way that is natural and normal for a romantically polarized type of relationship. At the same time, Scorpio doesn't want someone that is completely going to hand themselves over to them, to the relationship. There has to be a sense of meaning and purpose that they see in the other person in service of that person's goals or hobbies or whatever they're interested in. It's got to be there. Scorpio may think, oh, it's not important, but over time, it's going to be an issue. What does this mean in practice? There's got to be parts of your life, like the Lion King, where the light always touches. And it doesn't mean that those areas can't be shared in a relationship or, communicated, but ultimately those areas in a person's life don't depend on anyone else. It's sort of about staying completely within your own frame, your own grounding for certain things that are important to you. So say you're a painter. Maybe you do it for a career. Maybe you just do it for fun. Maybe it's just something you do 2 or 3 times a month. You bust out your paints and you get your paper out, your easel, your canvas, whatever, and you just go ham. Have a glass of seltzer, have a glass of wine, listen to some music, and you just do your thing. And you're gonna do that regardless of whether someone says, hey, your art freaking blows, or someone's like, well, I want you to spend time with me. None of that matters. It's like, first of all, this is for me. I can do this. I'm always gonna make time for this. I don't care what anyone thinks. This makes me happy and I'm passionate about it. At a time when sort of the path of least resistance is so normalized, when avoiding critical thinking at all costs is so normalized and encouraged, when people spend all of their free time just anesthetizing themselves via drugs or alcohol or binging Netflix or binge eating or just sitting on the couch. Not that there's anything inherently wrong with that, but those aren't things that are necessarily feeding your soul. You're not emotionally exciting the spirit. It sounds kind of remarkable, but to the extent that anyone keeps hobbies that they just do for the freaking sake of it, that don't necessarily make them money, that they just do because it feeds their soul, that's so astounding. It's so remarkable. And it doesn't even have to be a big thing. Again, I'm not talking about, oh, you have this whole passion project that became your whole career. You're lucky enough to intersect those two. It's literally just, do you make that time to just do something that you care about? And it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. I'm just repeating myself, but I'm trying to hammer down the significance of it. Scorpio sees that and it presses the hell out of them. It really does. If you have something like that and you're talking to a Scorpio or you're in a relationship with a Scorpio, this isn't just about impressing the Scorpio, right? Never give those things up for anyone. They're so important. If you have things that feed your soul, hold on to them so tightly. And when you do that, as a byproduct, as secondary effect, Scorpio is just gonna be so impressed by it. Number 3, you have integrity through and through every ounce of your being. It's not just about loyalty. It's not blind loyalty to a Scorpio or anyone else. It's integrity, which is a little bit different. Loyalty is kind of a pledge. It's an external sort of thing, whereas integrity is a state of being. It's an approach to life. It's a decision that you make on how to act in difficult situations. People that have high integrity typically are pretty loyal to the things they care about, but someone with integrity, when something is not working or they don't feel like they can make that commitment or loyalty anymore, they talk about it, they communicate, they realize that they can't live a cognitively dissonant life, right? Everything has to be aligned. And what does it mean to have integrity to a Scorpio? Say, for example, you are dating them or you're in a relationship with them. Yes, having integrity means they are not going to necessarily cheat. It's kind of basic stuff. Integrity, it's more subtle, and a Scorpio will pick up on this. It's the consistency with which you are the person that you are across life's variety of different situations. So are you a person that acts in a certain way around one person, but acts in a completely different way around another? Like you talk not so well about a particular friend to other friends, but then when you're around this other friend, you act like you're sort of best friends. Integrity is this idea that you are always the same person, regardless of who's observing you. And even if you don't cheat or there's not infidelity, you're not doing things outside of the relationship that, you know, if a Scorpio is there, would be maybe inconsistent to them. It doesn't mean that you can't have maybe secrets that you feel like maybe it's not yet appropriate to share with a Scorpio, or it doesn't mean that you can't have confidants or you can't have people that you vent to when you're frustrated. Everyone should have that support system, but it's consistent, right? It's consistent with sort of the person that you are. You might vent or something, but you're always like setting context. How does the person talk about Scorpio when Scorpio is not there? That's so important. Does the person engage in white lies? White lies on their face are arguably okay or acceptable or morally justifiable, but for Scorpio, like they don't really want that sugar-coated reality. They feel like their reality is pushed through something fake. They want the unfiltered truth most of the time. And to the extent that you engage in white lies with not only them, but also with other people, it agitates them and it makes them feel like they're farther away from like really connecting with you. And it also, you know, might suggest to them that there's other things that you would be okay with being dishonest about. For Scorpio, truth is so important. Emotional truth, observational truth, narrative truth. It is always going to be imperfect. It's always relative, but they want the most unfiltered version of it from you, and what you see and what you give and what you are describing to other people. They want that to be consistent. And when it is, they will absolutely notice it. It's also how you behave and act with the Scorpio. Are you boastful? Are you coming from a place of ego? Are you bragging? Scorpios pick up on those things. Qualities of being humble, of trying to take a backwards perspective, trying to take a mindful perspective. Scorpio sees someone that can do that well, and they have such a tremendous amount of respect for it. It's incredibly impressive to them. Next item that impresses Scorpio is the ability to go below the surface, right? To engage in deep conversations, to want to hunger for something more than just small talk. Scorpios are extremely attracted, whether romantically or just otherwise in you know, friendship contexts. They're attracted to people that aren't satisfied with group dynamics, right? People that typically want to get to know someone on a one-on-one level, or like can't really consider someone to be a close friend until they've really gotten to know them deeply aside from the social context. Scorpios crave someone that is not afraid to answer tough questions or to talk about things like intimacy or to talk about what they're feeling. Someone that can communicate it, or at least have at least a faculty for listening to someone communicating their feelings, or valuing the importance of that, even if this particular individual isn't so good at doing it themselves. It's so important. It goes back to the archetypes associated with Scorpio, with Pluto, with 8th house. We're talking about the subconscious and our traumas, both capital T and lowercase t traumas, and our hopes and our dreams. And the life of a Scorpio is so intense, and sometimes it's observably intense, and sometimes a lot is happening below the surface. A lot of it is a still waters run deep situation, and Scorpio is really looking for someone that wants to be a partner or a co-pilot on that journey. Doesn't mean that they have to be the captain. It doesn't mean that you should be Scorpio's therapist, or you should be a sounding board for all their trauma and difficulty. But Scorpio is on a journey of personal growth, of personal meaning, of transformation. And those have to at least be of some type of value. That value is demonstrated through the ability to communicate, through deep conversation, through the willingness to chew on these subjects and talk about what is the meaning of life, what is one's purpose, what is holding them back. Scorpio wants someone that, wants to have maybe monthly meetings where the couple talks about, hey, like what's working, what's not working, what's been bothering you, what are you really trying to do next month, or how can we make our relationship better, how can we make our partnership better. Sometimes those are awkward conversations, sometimes those are hard conversations, but they're such important conversations to have if you're really on this personal growth, personal development path. To the extent that big topics come up in conversation, someone's like, whoa, that was too intense, or whoa, that's a little too morbid, or like, gee, it's very clear, I think, when someone doesn't really resonate with going that far below the depths, or it makes them too uncomfortable. And that's completely fine. You just have to understand that Scorpio is not looking for that. They're looking for the opposite. And if you're not someone that is naturally aligned in that same way, I don't think that you should necessarily try to be. You shouldn't try to be someone that you're not. But it is something to be aware of, something that Scorpio is looking for, something that really impresses them.